There is a method of learning that I've been using for years to force my brain to study even when I don't feel like it, especially on days where I am feeling tired and burnt out. It's called the ladder method. I use this method to study learning science while working as a doctor full-time, while running a business. I also use this for my full-time master's, again while I was working full-time, and I managed to graduate at the top of my cohort. It's probably one of the most useful techniques that I use on a daily basis. Anyone can use, including you. And I'll show you how it works on something like this beefy textbook. But first, we have to understand why we don't feel like learning in the first place. And once you understand that, the ladder method will make a lot of sense. Now, there's a reason that we don't feel overwhelmed at the thought of tying our shoelaces or walking 20 steps, but we might get overwhelmed at the thought of climbing an entire mountain, even though walking a few steps and tying your shoes are the first steps of climbing a mountain. What's happening is that our brain is making a judgment on how hard something is going to be and how much effort and energy it's going to require. Our brain uses a lot of energy. It's the most energy consuming organ in our body, consuming 20% of our resting energy. So it is incredibly efficient at avoiding unnecessary energy intake. Now, when it comes to studying, one of the most energy consuming things that your brain has to do, and therefore doesn't want to do, is to organize information. It's a crucial part of forming memory and developing understanding. So here's how that works. Imagine these marbles represent new information. Each marble is a fact or concept that you need to learn. And these cups represent how your brain is trying to organize it. Whenever you learn something new, your brain has to look at it, understand it, analyze it, and make a decision about which cup it belongs in. It looks at how similar it is to what is already inside these cups, and it groups this information based on similarities. And all of this thinking takes energy, and we feel that as mental effort. Our brain is working. And once it figures out where it belongs, and then it organizes it, then the mental effort goes down because it's stored away. And this process repeats with the next piece of information it looks at, makes a decision, and then decides where we want to store it. And then we repeat this process until our learning is complete. So then what part of this makes our brain feel overwhelmed so that we don't feel like studying? Well, imagine if I didn't have any cups at all. Now, instead of picking up a piece of information, looking at it and asking ourselves, which cup does it go in? We have to ask ourselves, how many cups do I need? Which cup should I get? What are the alternative options? What else do I need to put into this hypothetical cup? And then what am I meant to do if a few more pieces of information later, I realize that was wrong? After all, I don't know what other options there are because I've only got this one piece of information to work with. And trying to figure out all of that takes much more effort and energy, which creates the I don't want to study feeling. So there are three main ways that your brain uses lots of energy while learning. First is to just understand what it is consuming, reading, listening to. The second is to compare it with what you already know. And then the third is to decide where it's going to put that information. Where does it belong based on how similar it is or how related it is to the things that you just compared it to. And trying to do all three of these things at once while you're learning creates overwhelm and is going to be very daunting. So what do we do instead? So let's say that I want to study this chapter in this textbook. Immediately, I look through this and I feel like, man, there's a lot to cover. I feel like that's going to require a lot of work. I'm getting overwhelmed and now I don't want to study. This is where the ladder method comes in. Based on the ladder method, we're going to be breaking up this topic, this chapter, based on different rungs of effort. And each rung on the ladder is low effort. So let me show you this. Here's what I'm doing during this. I'm going through the textbook and I'm looking for the things that are low effort. I'm saying, what are the things that feel easy for me to understand, that I can easily compare with the things that I already know, and that I can easily think about, and how the topic might be organized. I'm also using some non-linear note-taking to track my thoughts, which I talk about in some other videos. I'm also highlighting the parts that I actually focused on just for you to be able to see at the end of this. I wouldn't normally highlight anything when I'm doing this, just the non-linear notes is fine. You'll be able to see that, but I'm just trying to show you what I am focusing on and what I am either skim reading or just completely skipping because I think it would take too much effort to try to understand or compare or to organize. By the way, don't worry, this is an old ass textbook with highlighting all over the place already. I'm not ruining a new book. Okay, so as you can see, I have skipped basically, like most things. If you look at the parts that are highlighted, most of it has been skipped. It's pretty bare. However, I have managed to, with just the parts that I focused on, build a pretty decent scaffold for me to work off of. And so this topic has become a little bit easier for me now than it would have been 10-15 minutes ago. So if I'm really tired, I can call that a day. I can end on that rung of the ladder and I can pick up the second rung another day. Or if I want to, I can just do the second rung now. And on the second rung, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna look for the things that feel easier and feel lower effort. I'm gonna build on my scaffold and build up on my knowledge. But the difference is that it's going to take a little bit longer. Each successive rung on the ladder takes a little bit longer because now more things make sense to us than they did before. And we're probably ready to go into a little bit more detail. Having said that, it is still low effort because now I've established some of those major cups I need to fill. So let's now do the second rung. Alrighty, and that was about 35 minutes that I spent on that. So you can see the second rung took a little longer. I was able to get through more detail. What was surprising in a way is that the second rung, when I went through it, there wasn't a lot more stuff that I felt like I was going through, but it was more like I was just going through the same ideas, but deeper and really figuring it out. And you can see that a lot of the time was spent on just organizing the information. So you can see of the ways that our brain can use energy. Before, I was using a lot of that energy on just trying to understand things and put things together in a very general, rough way. Again, just figuring out maybe how many cups I need roughly. And in the second rung, I'm now refining that. I'm spending more of that energy not on just understanding, but now really on just making sure those decisions and those comparisons are correct. So same amount of effort, just used in a different way depending on the rung. Now, the third time I go through it should be enough to cover off this topic. I'd be going through a little bit more of those details, either adding them to my map or adding them to flashcards, depending on the type of information. Most topics I find, you generally can get through all of it in just 3 rungs of the ladder. And so here's the secret as to why this technique works so well. It's because each rung takes the same effort as the last rung, and I'm splitting all the work that I'd need to do for this topic into each rung. It makes every study session easy because we're just not letting ourselves spend time on things that are hard. But also, it gets easier the more you do it. Even though with each rung we're covering more content and more detail, it's easier to make sense of it because our cups and our structure and our foundations are so strong. The more you learn, the easier it gets. You can also apply the same approach for projects or assignments as well, where you start with the easy high-level planning first and you progressively get more and more detailed with each rung of the ladder. Now, this is just one type of way that you can use the ladder method, and there are so many other applications of this principle that I teach in my full guided program. But for someone who has never tried studying like this, it is a complete game changer. By the way, if you are interested in my program, you can check out the link in the description. There's this technique and dozens of other techniques that you can learn. Once you start using this ladder method a couple of times, your brain will realize, hey, studying isn't that bad. And it'll make you less likely to put things off and less likely to procrastinate. And although this technique is amazing, there is a lot more to learning than just the ladder method. So make sure to check out this video next, which YouTube thinks you will like. And as we all know, the YouTube algorithm knows us better than we know ourselves. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.